started. Okay, so what is change management? So change management is a process. That word is really important here. So the process of managing a business's transition from its current state to a desired future state. It is a pretty broad expression as well, but it's all about being strategic and structured. So, a strategic and structured approach that is all about enhancing a company's performance and making it more competitive in the market. So, it's identifying where you want to be and how you're going to get there. So, there's a whole bunch of different things that businesses face in terms of change. So, the expectations and the demands of consumers are constantly changing as our society changes. So, things like consumer tastes, we are increasingly concerned with things like supporting local suppliers, buying Australian as well, or buying in our local community. There's a shift towards sustainability. We want to look after the environment more and make sure that we're treating people and all of the people and things that are involved in the production process well. And also things like vegan and vegetarian products are also things that have developed in terms of consumer tastes over time. And these are all things that businesses need to factor in to their decision making and potentially make some adjustments for. There's some other examples here as well. So, in the market or products that are sold, so the way that things are sold, for example, online shopping has obviously grown over the years. We've got the sort of society that we live in, the sort of throwaway society or the need it now society, can impact the way that a business operates and how employees perform their jobs. We've got things like the self-serve checkouts in supermarkets. In some supermarkets now, there are a whole bunch of self-serve checkouts and virtually no traditional checkouts. And again, sustainability and things like that as well. And lastly, the way that things are produced because of technology and automation, those things have changed a lot, and businesses have needed to change accordingly. So, of course, we've got artificial intelligence is a big thing now. Other things that are sort of still developing, or we might see more in the future, things like drone deliveries, driverless vehicles, we've got things like electric cars and Uber and those sorts of things as well. And businesses need to think about how those trends are going to impact their operations. So, for example, if you've got a restaurant, then maybe they need to think about having vegan and vegetarian products on their menu and supporting local suppliers. They may need to allow people to order their meal online and potentially get it delivered via Uber Eats or an equivalent of that. So you can see how all of these different things can come together to have a big impact on the way a business operates. So, as part of this unit, you need to be able to describe business facts and characteristics relating to business renewal. And that's going to include the internal, operating, and macro environmental factors that influence the need for change. So, we can see in this diagram here that we've got those three levels. The internal is encompassing our owners and managers, employees, organizational structure, and organizational culture. And we'll have a look at some examples of these things as well. We've also got operating, and this is the next layer out, customers, competitors, suppliers, and interest groups. And the biggest level, the macro level, is where we've got the steeple analysis kind of acronym is handy to remember this. So sociocultural, technological, economic, environmental, political, legal, and ethical. That's the steeple there. So you may see this as kind of like if you think of the business as being a house. Inside the house, you've got the people and the structures that make it tick. So the employees, the owners, the actual structure of the organization, and the culture of the organization are all inside that building. The operating is sort of a mesh between the outside and the inside. Um, it's kind of the walls of the business. You've got customers, competitors, and suppliers that are all coming from the outside, but they are in the fabric of the way that the business operates. Then we've got the broader business environment as well. So all of the things that happen in society and those things that impact the business on those broader levels. So let's have a look at all of these different things and some examples to help us get our heads around this. So in your exam and as well at school when you're practicing these skills, you'll likely be looking at business case studies and their situations, perhaps getting some stimulus, and then needing to figure out how you can describe the way that the business has been impacted by whatever factors are relevant in that case, and why that has influenced the need for change in that business. So, an example that you've likely come across before is the Dreamworld example. So, the internal environmental factor influencing the need for change for Dreamworld was employees. So, they had the Thunder River Rapids ride accident back in 2016. And so this resulted in employees putting some pressure on the organization to provide some more training around safety and things like that to prevent those sorts of incidents happening again, because the employees felt they needed to have better training so they could operate the rides safely. So those sorts of things are internal pushes that are going to make a business change the way that it operates. Of course, in this case, like in many cases, you're going to have more than just one. So while employees did push for change in this case, you've also got other sort of stakeholders who would have pushed for change here as well. So interest groups in terms of um, all of the different investors in Dreamworld, authorities, and sort of the legal system as well. You've got that macro aspect where you had the legalities involved in having this accident and making sure that it wouldn't happen again. So, as we'll see in these other examples we'll look at, it's usually more than just one that you can identify for each example. And sometimes that is a skill as well. Sometimes you'll be asked to describe business factors and characteristics relating to one of these three different levels, and you'll need to think about what is the main thing that you need to describe. Another example is Coca-Cola. So in this case, we're looking at the operating level and its customers. So influencing the need for change was customers because their tastes were changing and they were increasingly interested in healthier eating and being more conscious of sugar intake and things like that. So consumers are also more aware of their environmental footprint, and this is where we can see that it's not just the operating level here; it's also the macro level with that macro environmental factor. And so here, Coca Cola had to make several changes. And Some of those were around the products that it was going to offer, in terms of making sure it was catering to those tastes, and also the dietary kind of considerations. Things like sugar taxes as well. So government and political kind of decision making would have played in here as well on that macro level. And then the environmental footprint as well. So, for example, in this case, one of the changes that Coca-Cola made was making its packaging fully recyclable, to cater to those environmental kind of pushes in the market. Another example for operating is Eastbridge. So this is a retailer selling clothes, and it used to be in Australia with different outlets, but the factor that needed to change that was competitors. So it was struggling financially in the competitive retail industry in Australia. So it decided to implement change, to try and counteract its falling revenues, and it wanted to focus its resources in the Asian market. So it would have been some research in that area to identify the market that it was best to target, and the Asian market was what it identified as being the best option there. So that's competitors that can drive an organization out of a certain market. And then usually there are other factors that are going to be involved in that as well. So economic factors, sociocultural factors, and those sorts of things that impact what is popular in certain markets, and where it is best for businesses to focus their attention. And another example, this one is macro. We've got the environmental factor here. So, in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, Lego changed its materials to make sure it was using products that are made from renewable or recyclable materials. So, the same idea as Coca-Cola before, those changing values in society. So, that's a socio-cultural kind of aspect coming in as well, and the environmental values as well. Um, so they changed their packaging, and it's now made from sustainable materials that can easily be recycled.